Okay then. Well, welcome to the Poetry Box Live. Our final feature tonight is Zeina Azzam. Zeina Azzam is the author of Baina Baina In Between. She is a Palestinian American poet, writer, editor, and community activist. She volunteers for organizations that promote Palestinian human rights and the civil rights of vulnerable communities in Alexandria, Virginia, where she lives. Zeina currently works as a publications editor for the think tank Arab Center, Washington, D.C. Her poems have appeared widely in journals and anthologies, including Pleiades Magazine, Cordite Poetry Review, Beltway Poetry Quarterly, Mizna, Split This Rock, The Poeming Pigeon, Gaza Unsilenced, Yellow as Turmeric, Fragrant as Cloves. With the poet Sharif Elmusa, Zeina co-translated 14 poems by Arab poets for Loch Raven Review. She holds an MA in Arabic literature from Georgetown University and an MA in sociology from George Mason University. It is my pleasure to welcome Zeina Azzam.
Thank you so much, Shawn. And it's really hard going after your poetry, Julia, which was really so powerful and so moving and very touching. And my condolences to you and your family. And Diana Lee, it's lovely to be reading with you. First, I'd just like to thank Shawn for everything she did in terms of this book. I really appreciated her design and her willingness to put some Arabic on the cover. I'm not sure that's ever been done before. I don't know, at Poetry Box. And so I really appreciated that. It's been lovely working with you. And so I would like to just say quickly that, as Shawn mentioned, I'm Palestinian, and my parents were refugees in 1948 when there was a war and the state of Israel was established. And so they became refugees and went from Palestine to Syria to Lebanon, and then we came here to the United States. So I had my childhood in Beirut and was an immigrant with my family at age 10. My first poem is titled Leaving My Childhood Home. On our last day in Beirut, with my 10 years packed in a suitcase, my best friend asked for a keepsake. I found a little tin box to give her, emptied of lemon drops that would hold memories of our childhood, us swinging in the dusty schoolyard, rooftop hide and seek, wispy sweet jasmine, kilos of summertime figs, king of falafels, tahini-bathed sandwiches, our pastel autograph books. All those remembrances crammed in that box, tiny storytellers waiting to speak. Later, her family would uproot too, transplant like surly Palestinian weeds pulled every few years. We all knew about this, even the kids. I never saw her again, but know that she also learned to travel lightly, hauling empty boxes, pulsing with kilos of memories. I think because of, the refugee stories, the narratives that I lived and breathed through my parents all my life, I have a special, sensitivity and empathy to other refugee communities, and especially the Syrian refugees, the raging war that's been in Syria for so many years. I've got 3 poems in the chapbook about Syria. I'm going to read a very short one. I volunteered a few years ago at a dental clinic here in Northern Virginia that was giving services to Syrian refugees, and I was helping translate from English to Arabic. Syrian refugee at the dental clinic. Iman from Homs is 20 years old. At 13, she married and got pregnant with the first of 4 children. A broken tooth and 3 cavities, baby on her breast, mouth wincing in pain. Iman never learned to use a toothbrush to clean accumulated tar, plaque, or microscopic bits of food left over from her journey a month ago. Maybe that's why she clenches her teeth to keep the taste of home. So the title of the book, as Shawn mentioned, is Baina Baina, in between. Baina is the Arabic word for between. So when you put two of them together, Baina Baina, or sometimes it's just Baina Bain, it means betwixt and between. And I chose that to be the theme of my chapbook because I feel like I'm in between things a lot in my life. Everything from being, from home to exile to being between two languages, between two cultures, and also just, having love and losing love, having loving family members and losing them, or friends. So there's always this sort of in-betweenness. So the title of the poem is Baina Baina, in between, and it starts with an epigraph from an old novel called Arabian Jazz by Diana Abu Jabir. And I held on to this quote for many years until I used it with this poem. And here's the quote: "To be the first generation in this country, with another culture always looming over you, you are the ones who are born homeless, Bedouins. You're torn in two. You get two looks at the world. You may never have a perfect fit, but you see far more than most ever do. Baina Baina, in between. Through a darkened window, I look for the moon of my childhood. It was bigger then, closer, with rays spread like illumined hands against a deep blackness between night and morning. After we crossed the sea, then the ocean, leaving home behind, I began to see everything like this moon's light, Baina Baina, in between, bookended by other elements, defined by borders not its own. I was a green shoot, sprouting from two leaves, a river meandering between banks that spell its shape, give it a name. My dreams were flower petals pressed in pages of a book about aliens and travelers. I lived in the canyon between a mother language and an adopted tongue, Baina Baina, betwixt and between. I looked for others who collect stories about childhood moons, oceans crossed with faith that we will press against each other on the other side, make something new, two eyes wide open, two looks at the world, lifting up our in-betweenness, not knowing if one day we would see far more than most ever do. This poem is about my mother, who passed away about a year and a half ago. And I thought a lot about her as a refugee who is growing older. And I wondered, I watched her and how she dealt with her memories and her pain and how it sort of aged with her. Far side of the moon. The epigraph is, her face is as beautiful as the moon. It's an old Arab saying. She is my mother, though the nugget of who she used to be is now turned away from us like the far side of the moon, reflecting light somewhere else. My mother pauses at now elusive words, forgets how to do simple things like changing the TV channel, making coffee, reading more than a few lines of a library book. We talk every day about the same things and reminisce too, because she loves to remember her life before the moon shifted. My mother is slowly letting go of her things, the pans and spatulas left behind like disinvited guests, the dough hook and the wire whip, laborers for decades, reluctantly given away. Stained glass butterflies hovering on her living room window have alighted elsewhere. Left in cabinets now are pieces she can't forsake. Tapestries and bowls from Palestine that remind her of scarlet poppies, a cobalt blue sea, an oversized tin box stuffed with black and white photographs from before the war, a sentry for her memories. She has not let go of that war, but the war doesn't linger much anymore on her lips because my mother now ends conversations before it's time, gives up on finishing a sentence. Yet her cratered face, still beautiful, is illumined by visits of a grandchild, telephone calls, a son's embrace. We bring chocolates, elicit a smile that lingers a while. My mother reminds us to look for the moon, even if turned, even if dark. Today, May 8th, is actually my father's birthday. He also passed away quite some time ago. This is a poem about him. My father's hands. They were not large, but thick, fleshy workers in the garden, nursing eggplants and fennel, okra and chard, digging and tilling and weeding, making the soil an obliging host. Maybe that's what made his fingers rough in spots, or maybe it was the constant leafing through books, a loving lick and a flip-flap of the page in search of nuggets that would be turned over and over in his mind. After he died, I found bookmarks between pages, carefully pointing like tags next to seedlings in the earth. These are the plants I hoped for. These are the ideas that made me grow. I'd like to read a poem about another friend, a friend I lost very early on. He was 19 and he died in a tragic bicycle accident in high school. Bob Hennessy, 1955 to 1974. You rode through our high school years on a 10 speed, not fast, but deliberate, bold, arms wide, two erect branches seeking sunlight, palms outstretched to greet air. To you, everything had a pithy core to explore. Scattered seeds needed to be gathered, beheld, unpeeled, understood. As our classmates went to college, you hitchhiked west, baled hay, befriended folks none of us would ever meet. You towered at 6'4", a robust trunk, flaming red curls standing up to the world, soldiers at attention. Maybe that's why I think of you most in autumn, when the Japanese maple turns myriad shades of flame. I imagine your roots lie here. Leaves fall as if in deference. The year you died, winter came too soon. I'll end with a poem that has a little bit of a more lighthearted aspect to it. It's called Poem for an Empty House. You guessed that I went home to an empty house every day, your eyes two flags at half-mast. Was I right, you asked? Do you feel lonely? I wanted to explain that on my way, I stopped to smell honeysuckle hanging over the fence. Neighbors look out kitchen windows to wave. A hand of Fatima welcomes at my door. Later, there's a nightly meander to the river. Sometimes a moon rises in the east. Really, my life is fine, I want to say. But you knew that my biggest wish was to open the front door to smells of onion and garlic frying, a chef at greeting. He would wrap his apron around my back and draw me near, salt and pepper in hand, spices for desire. I'd let him gather me up like swelling dough, exhaling. Then we'd fall to the floor, 2 spoons in size order, clanging. Maybe my undressed eyes tell this story, or maybe you're vying for the role of chef, offering to chop onions and make me weep. Thank you.
Oh, I love the ending of that poem, Zeina. That's such a good one. Oh, thank you. I love this collection. I love the way you have weaved the stories of your homeland and then your family life and your journey. It's just beautiful. And we all have these in-betweens, like you said. And I think it's kind of fitting that right now, I think we're all experiencing the in-between of the pandemic and getting back to normal. We're kind of all in that limbo, kind of waiting for things to keep opening up and what's going to be there, you know? So we're all in between. You're not alone. So thank you so much for that.